Bank of America has pledged an additional $15 billion to help home buyers over the next 4 years with down payment and closing cost assistance. Today, we are going to talk through some of the pros and cons so that you can determine whether these would be something that you should apply for your next home purchase. I'm Nicole Nark, Arkansas real estate broker, and welcome back to my channel with videos to help you find your way home. Let's get into some of the big pros of these programs. The first pro to consider is that these down payment and closing cost grants are 100% forgiven. They are free grant money essentially to you that you do not have to pay back. And if you've listened to or watched some of my other videos, you know that this is a little bit of a rare occurrence when it comes to down payment assistance. A lot of these programs require that you live in the home for a long period of time before they are forgiven, or come in a form of a second mortgage that you're actually paying as well. So the fact that these are pretty much forgivable really quickly is an awesome thing to consider. The second pro that I kind of alluded to in the last point is that you only have to live in this home for 1 year. Now, this does have to be your primary residence, but there are no 5-year, 10-year occupancy requirements that are found with a lot of other down payment assistance programs. So this could be good for a lot of you potentially looking at your first home that you know you may live in for possibly just 3 years before upsizing into something bigger, or maybe possibly buying in a different neighborhood. The third pro that really stands out to me is that this Bank of America program for down payment, in addition to closing costs getting covered, is available to repeat buyers as well. So this does not have to be your first home purchase. The fourth pro of these programs that I have identified is that you do not currently or really have to become a client or customer of Bank of America. You do not have to currently bank or have any loans with them in order to get approved for these programs. And that is a differentiator. There are some down payment assistance and closing cost programs that will require you to either be a customer of a certain organization or potentially live in a very specific spot. Now, the fifth and last pro that I want to bring up is the fact that these Bank of America grants for down payment and closing costs do not require extensive homebuyer education or volunteer work. Now, this may differ from programs like NACA. Now, NACA also can cover your down payment and closing costs, but if you have done any research on that program, it is a very extensive process. You have to go through 12 different steps of volunteer work and education before you can even get pre-approved for the loan. Now, there is a small online home buyer education course that they will have you take for these Bank of America grants, but it is very small compared to others that other down payment assistance programs may require you to complete. Now, with all of that being said, this seems like a great program. So let's turn into the cons to see if this is something that you guys still feel like would be worthwhile to apply for. The first con that I've identified while thinking over these grant programs is that you would have to use Bank of America as your lender in order to qualify and use these grants. So for example, if you are approved through Quicken Loans, let's say for a mortgage, you cannot apply and use the Bank of America grants for down payment and assistance and closing costs with your Quicken Loans mortgage. Bank of America is only giving out these grants to assist buyers who are getting their actual loan through Bank of America. So if you have another lender that you are really wanting to use, or you're just not a huge fan of Bank of America, this could be a potential downside for using these grant programs. Second con to consider is that these grant programs can only be used for a purchase of a home. They will not apply for things like refinances. So if you are refinancing, there are programs out there that may help assist you with your closing costs, and I have definitely seen those incentives recently. But these Bank of America programs specifically for down payment and closing costs would not be applicable to your refinances. The third con to consider is that with these programs, pretty much universally, there is more underwriting that goes on. Typically, down payment assistance will take about 45 days to close. And that's not necessarily specific to this Bank of America program for down payment assistance and closing costs, but it is something to keep in mind, because if you are up against other offers in a multiple offer situation, the seller may be inclined to pick a buyer whose offer can close as soon as possible if they need to close quickly. So it's just something to keep in mind, and I've identified it as a potential con, but based on your situation and the situation of the seller, that 45-day close time may not affect you. The fourth con is that these programs will most likely come with a higher interest rate. Now, the reason for this is not necessarily specific to Bank of America again, but most down payment assistance programs are going to come with a higher interest rate because they are offering you these programs and they need to basically recoup the funds for that. So it's kind of a trade-off, and really you are the only person who can determine whether using a down payment assistance or closing cost assistance program is going to be worth it for you. If you can get into a home sooner and maybe have a lower mortgage payment than you're paying in rent, then you may be fine with a higher interest rate because your monthly situation is improving and you're building equity. Now, of course, tons and tons of people buy homes with down payment assistance programs every single year. I don't want you to think it's impossible at all. However, don't be too surprised if you do not win maybe your first house that you make an offer on if you are in a competitive market using your down payment assistance loan. Now, one thing to note in addition to that is that not every state is going to require that in your offer you state that you are using a down payment assistance loan. Talk to your realtor about that and see whether you would have to disclose your use of down payment assistance, because that is another big potential way to kind of navigate and not even have to worry about this con. Let me know in the comments below whether you feel like it would be worth it for your home purchase. If you are looking at buying a home soon, check out my video on the 8 mistakes that you want to make sure that you avoid when buying your home. I definitely want you guys to not fall into the same traps that I see many buyers fall into so that you can have the best home buying experience possible. I will see you in the next video.